listening to the Hidden Path Podcast, brought to you by GodlikeProductions.com. This is episode 1. It was broadcasted on September 1st, 2018. Enjoy the show. You there?
I am here, waiting, willing, and ready.
Ladies and gentlemen, Renaissance Ted is with us. How you doing, Ted? You having a good night?
Not bad at all. It's always grand, very dark out here as it is all the time, and
yeah,
I'm enjoying myself.
Yeah, it's dark in here too. Dark out there in the world. It seems like a lot of darkness spreading around. So when I asked you to come on for this show, I know I told you something about, when I bring on guests, I'd like to kind of have them talk about something they've kind of gone down the rabbit hole after, kind of get knowledge on. And you brought up the subject of they, and I was like, wow, they, huh? Who's they? And who do you think they is? Well, first of all, let's just go ahead, describe for the audience what will we define they as?
Well, I guess one of the most important things I find is maybe who they is not and who they is. If that makes any sense. I mean, yes. Everybody knows that something is wrong. There is a tsunami out there that keeps washing over us day by day, and we seem to be awash in this thing without exactly knowing what we are awash in. I would say it's analogous to the undertow. If you've gone swimming where you oughtn't be swimming, you find you're in that position when you begin to get dragged out to sea, and you wish there was something you can do, or someone would throw you a life preserver. And I think the overall aspect of not understanding who they actually is initially would have to do with the fact that we are taught not to understand who they is, and the fact that if anyone does discover who they is, they oftentimes are silent.
Well, what do you mean by taught not to understand who they is?
Well, we have the Hegelian dialectic of the, I guess, largely mainstream media, who would say the villain, the they, is either the Democrat or the Republican, depending on which side of that ideological barrier you may or may not put yourself on. I tend to throw the whole right-left paradigm out, because the they who are those we have those in office who are definitely bad actors, who are doing unconstitutional things to us, who are putting us in bad positions, who are elevating their friends and their cronies.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and I think...
go ahead.
I think that's why Trump's gotten a lot of support, too. I mean, people are like, oh, I can't believe he won. And it's like, really? He was talking about tearing things down. I think that's what a lot of people want to see. They're tired of the same thing. Whether you agree with Trump or not. I feel like it was kind of an undertone of people being upset, right? Maybe upset with whoever they are, being upset that they don't know who they is, but they know they can kind of see, that shadowy, I guess you can almost see the strings being pulled in a way, right?
I would certainly agree with you there. I mean, what we do know is that currently the table is set for they, and we'll get into the identity of they in a couple of minutes.
Yeah.
But the one thing we know about Donald Trump, or at least suspected before he got elected, was the fact that he was very likely to kick over this table that was set for they.
Yeah, okay, I can see that.
And I would say that he is in fact doing that, and you can tell by the nonstop attacks the man is receiving.
Yeah.
I mean, if they had anything on him, if they had anything convictable on him, if they had anything essentially other than minor ethics violations, which I myself quite probably am guilty of at various times in my life,
right, yeah.
He would have been strung up. They would not still be going after him. They would still not be searching 2 years later had they had anything substantial to pin on the guy.
Right, definitely. That's kind of what... I have a personal friend within our circle that I talk to, and he believes all this Russian Gate stuff and whatnot. And I used to once find him very open-minded, but that's the one thing he told me. He's like, the one thing is Trump is just an asshole. And I'm like, well, is he an asshole towards you, or is he an asshole towards people that have been assholes to us, And can you name somebody that hasn't been an asshole? right? I mean,
I would say in a world where we're awash in a group of individuals or organizations who are subverting our way of life, I would argue that an asshole is required at that point in time to set things right.
yeah, right. Definitely. Yeah, and that's kind of my point too. Is the Trump thing is definitely touch and go, right? There's part of me that loves what he's doing. There's part of me that loves this movement. I love seeing people, these so-called experts getting upset, losing their whole composure, right? The other part of me, the conspiracy side of me, the truth-seeking side of me, I kind of wonder if it's not an elaborate, intelligent setup too. But, where do you go from there? Then you can just say, well, everything's a simulation, right?
One of our, I don't think everything's a simulation. I think we live in reality, and they are attempting to make us think that this is a simulation. I mean, the greatest thing that they could ever do would be to convince us that the real world is unreal, and therefore it's simply a subjective thought problem. There is no right, no wrong.
Throw the
up,
history
no
books
down.
out. Let's go watch The Matrix. That's all you have to do, right?
Yep, it's interesting that you hit on throw the history books out, and it's interesting that you hit on the Matrix. I think the red pill has become an iconic.
Yes. Yeah, it's definitely a symbol of
allegory in our time.
Yes, and a symbol for here, take the red pill, and here, have some information, open your mind, and a lot of times it status quo is so powerful in people's minds. The empirical science, empirical everything. It's a little maddening sometimes when you think about it. When you're just trying to struggle and deal with somebody, and you almost want to shake them, like, come on, wake up. It's like I'm talking to somebody who's sleeping in the bed. It's like talking to somebody who's asleep. Literally, that's why they call it awakening. So.
Exactly, and information overload is the key to keeping everybody asleep. Once information becomes available, overload is the only possibility to keep everybody from understanding what's going on. Whatever your occupation may be, if you've studied, have you gone to school for it, you've learned the ins and outs of your education, whether that be house building, boat building, sales and accounting, whatever that is. You walk into that environment, you know exactly who they is.
Right, yeah.
If something is wrong in that environment, you can puzzle it out, figure it out, start from point A to point B, troubleshoot it, and figure out what's going on. People cannot do that in the world in general because there are nexus points or bottlenecks which have been taken over by they at various times in our history. And it's not just this year. It's not just the Republicans. It's not just last year. It's not just the Nazis. It's not just the socialists. It's not just Woodrow Wilson enacting the Federal Reserve Act. These are all symptoms. It's not even Karl Marx. He was simply a mouthpiece for a group of people who demanded that he quantify a methodology of subjecting a population to slavery.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely see that.
They go back far further than that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. What would you think about America as far as being in the world spotlight as being probably the one country that does have the most, I don't know how I would put this, leniency, I guess. We call it freedom, right? We call it the land of the brave, home of the free. But we know a lot of our freedoms are gone. But on the world stage, I guess we would be the most, the rebels, the one last hurdle, right? I feel maybe we're the last. Yeah,
I would say we're simply the last attempt to breathe life into an empire that died before us that nobody mentioned.
Yeah.
The largest empire the world has ever seen was the Grand Tartary Empire. And if you go back and look at maps back in the 1600s, 1400s, 1300s, 1200s, 1100s, the Tartary Empire straddled the entire planet.
Yeah. Wow.
Yet no mention of it in the history books.
Right. Yeah. In fact, I'm a little embarrassed, but I've never even heard of it myself.
It's a recent thing for me. Even I've been diving down various rabbit holes all my life, always feeling that I'm missing something, that I have to keep digging, keep finding. Every once in a while, I grab a bit or a piece of information that leads me into something that's absolutely inexplicable, and I felt more overwhelmed all the time until actually quite recently. put a hell of a lot of it together, and I can't take credit for that. TED Renaissance is not an achievement. TED Renaissance is a goal.
Yeah, I think it's all a goal for us. In fact, just the act of going down the rabbit hole searching is kind of odd looking for other people that are, happy with the way things are, I'm sure, they think, well, what are you planning on finding? What good could come for this? I mean, kind of like Cypher in the Matrix, ignorance is bliss. I made a mistake going down this rabbit hole. I don't want this. I don't want to fight. Well, he was sort of cowardly, but I mean, in that sense, we all are searching something, the truth. We hope it gives us something, but we all can kind of see that we don't need to even search to know that for a long time our government has been way out of our control, that's for sure. But yeah, so what would you think the symbology is on the back of the dollar bill it's been mentioned many times, the pyramid with the all-seeing eye on top? Do you think that's a symbolic use from the Masons?
Well, sort of. I mean, the Masons were at various times working for us or against us, infiltrated, et cetera, but the key to understanding who they is actually understanding what money is. Money was the first innovation of they. Money, think of the word, mon I, the one I.
Yeah, that's true.
Money is an innovation of the Assyrians. The Assyrian Talmud is the handbook of they. The symbol of they is the owl. That's why you see them bowing and ritualizing to the owl at the Bohemian Grove.
Right.
And they has been the same throughout history. I mean,
yeah. What's interesting about the owl thing is, they've shown it's also, there's one on the dollar bill. It's kind of small. One at Washington, D.C., if you look above it from an aerial view, it kind of looks like there's one there in the streets making a pattern of an owl. And, the owl is kind of symbolic for some people towards what they would call the gray aliens, right?
I would say every time I think that anybody gets close to understanding what's truly going on, immediately there is an injection of misinformation. And one of the things is people gets close to the origin of what the owl symbolizes. And in this case, in the case of the Assyrians, or once they left Assyria, they went to Khazaria.
Yeah. And
what we think of as the current they in this world are the Khazars, and they have been the Khazars for 1,000 years.
Okay.
If one were to Google Khazars and find out where the system of usury came from, where compound interest came from, where the system of striking one against another, I mean, we track this back just 100 years to Karl Marx and Hegel and Kant in their relativity symbolisms, moral relativism, the Hegelian dialectic, set one against the other.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, when this is done, immediately what they do is they inject aliens.
Right. Yeah, I feel
in our day and age.
I feel a lot of that too is like I'll listen to who's that guy? Is his name David Wilcock? He's got a guy named Emery Smith, right? And this guy's supposedly I guess you would call him a source, but he's on stage. They have these events. I was thinking of going to his event in Colorado, but it was like $800, and I didn't actually go there. I was planning to go there, I didn't. But anyways, he talks about being a part of the secret Space Force, right? That he had dissected like 1,300 different species of aliens and stuff, and he's going on and on and on. A lot of big hosts like Jimmy Church and other people, they've mentioned that, man, he's so on it. It seems he's telling the truth because he doesn't contradict himself. And I'm just like, man, it just sounds too bizarre, honestly. And if I think about it, if anybody thinks about it, he's on stage everywhere. It kind of seems like it's just ridiculous.
I myself would like to see a shred of evidence. I mean, extraordinary claims require extraordinary proof. And to say that one's dissected 1,300 species of aliens, et cetera, that's not proof. Now, if you look at Catherine Austin Fitz talking about the secret Space Force, She's simply saying somebody must have done something with the $42 trillion, and let's see where this rabbit hole goes.
Yeah.
But she's not claiming she dissects aliens. She's dissecting forensically the accounting of the United States government. And I would argue that any superhero team, I mean, if you've seen superhero teams, or a superhero who has some backup, you know, Batman had his Commissioner Gordon, and typically they have a computer hacker helping them, and typically they have an in guy in the police force. What all these people are missing, what these superheroes are missing, in order to find out what is going on, you have to follow the money, and if you're going to follow the money, you need a forensic accountant. They're missing a forensic accountant.
Yeah. Well, definitely. I mean, we've seen that with Ron Paul, who wanted to audit the Fed, right?
Yep, that is correct.
We've seen it, you know, with other people. They've brought to the attention of others. I think I found a great website once. I can't remember what it's called. It might be auditthefed.com. I'm not sure, but they break it down in such a great graphical way to understand for the person that might hear the Federal Reserve and be like, what are you talking about? I don't know. Is that a Federal Express or what? No.
It's just as federal as Federal Express.
Exactly, yeah. But, yeah, I mean, we can't audit them, right? We can't. That's part of the whole thing. You know, I think Trump mentioned one time, there's this rally, or it wasn't even a rally, it was like a little conference he was at, and the guy stood up to ask him a question. He said, and I'm paraphrasing, he said, Mr. Trump, there's only 3 countries or 4 countries that have a central bank controlled by the IMF. And that's like Iraq, Syria, North Korea. I believe those are the 3. And he said, you know, why do you think that is, and why do you think we're going to war with them? And Trump said, well, you're missing one that is no longer going to be a part of it. Because the guy said these are no longer a part of the, or they are not a part of the IMF right now, but we're like engaged with them. And Trump said, well, you're missing one more. And he smiled and kind of chuckled. He went to the next question. Like, and you know what? I've gone back and I've tried to find that footage. And I wonder if somebody that's listening could find that, because I haven't been able to find it again. And it was really an indicator that he was kind of saying, yeah, you're missing one more country that's not going to be a part of it. Guess which one that is?
Yeah, I would hope that would be ours. I mean, if you notice, Libya, as soon as the rebels declared rebellion in Libya, which we, of course, backed up with hellfire and fury, the first thing the rebels did when they took a city is they declared a central bank with fealty to Brussels.
Yeah, right.
The first thing they did. And, you know, America's Federal Reserve is a private company, and the chief stockholder is the Baron de Rothschild out of England.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
we've all heard that, certainly,
definitely.
Yeah. We certainly lost the Revolutionary War in 1913.
Yeah, well, the whole interesting thing about that is, you know, I kind of understood about the Federal Reserve and stuff, but then I went down the path of researching, like, people like Tesla. I'm like, who's this Tesla guy, you know? And when I went into researching him, I seen what he did, who he was involved with. He had J.P. Morgan backing him. The J.P. Morgan, you know, he owned White Star Lines or was in control of it, and Titanic sank. There were some rich people on that boat, rich Americans. Next year, we get the Federal Reserve, right? And J.P. Morgan
more importantly, they were the rich Americans who opposed the Federal Reserve.
Right. Yeah, like John Jacob Astor. I mean, he's a Trump-type character. He's the richest guy in the world. He owns, you know, he made buildings in New York City. One of them was the Astoria Hotel, which is still there. That's the one where Trump had his little roast of Hillary in front of all those well-dressed people that were wearing goblets on their necks. I mean, and, you know, that's a beautiful hotel, the John Jacob Astoria, you know, the Astoria Hotel. It's owned by a Chinese investment company now, so.
Yeah, the Li family of China is the 5th largest stockholder in our Federal Reserve.
Wow.
Strangely
that
enough.
Doesn't surprise me.
Yeah. Let's go back to Tesla for a moment. Like, why was Tesla science suppressed? This is in the vein of they. Well, if you're going to suppress any science over the entire face of this planet, it's quite simple. All you need to do is institute a peer review system.
Yeah, or just, you know, safety. It's for your safety. Well, somebody said the legitimate, you know, the reason why he's not more well known than he was back then is because he was an immigrant, and Americans were kind of they made the assumption that because he was an immigrant, it wasn't put in textbooks and stuff. And I'm thinking, man, this was like in the churn of the early or the late 1800s. I mean, a lot of people were immigrants, weren't they? Still, I mean.
Oh yeah, that's absolutely correct, and I would say that's simply a they explanation.
Definitely.
In this case, yeah, I mean, if you want to see the head of they popping up generationally, all you got to do is look to the Huxley family.
Okay.
Yeah, you'll find who was running MK Ultra. Well, that was Aldous Huxley.
Yeah.
Who was responsible for the formation of the peer review system. That was Thomas Huxley.
Okay.
They is in this instance, you could say they would be the Huxley family, but again, they are the Khazars. They're followers of the Assyrian Talmud from 1,000 years ago,
okay.
And they've never stopped. They continue with their machinations, using the money system, using the monetary system, controlling the flow of information. There's a few very simple things that they do, and when you put that in the context of they need 5 or 6 points of bottleneck control, and they realize that they need these 5 or 6 bottlenecks of control.
Yeah.
And from a broader perspective, let's zoom out to 30,000 feet, and let's just look at those 5 or 6 bottlenecks of control. I mean, the primary one is control of the monetary system. The Khazars invented the monetary system. They invented control of the monetary system.
Now, when you say the
Khazars,
maybe there's people listening that don't understand. What do you mean? Do you mean from a certain area of the world, or?
Oh, let's if you were to Google Khazars or a map of Khazaria, you'll find that they moved from Assyria. When Assyria fell, the Assyrian Talmudists moved to the Khazari region, which is right around the Black Sea near the mouth of the Volga.
Okay.
And the Khazars were battling the Tartars, the world-spanning empire of Tartaria. Wow. I mean, that's why our Constitution comes from Tartaria. That's why Ben Franklin himself borrowed an awfully lot from the Iroquois Constitution, because the Khazar Empire spanned America. You went down to the Incas. They were, Tartars. The Tartary Empire. Their primary rule was truth.
Well, that's a good
which
rule.
is one of the things. You look about the time frame of the American century, the last American century, the 20th century, when Woodrow Wilson instituted the Federal Reserve, the IRS, and the income tax. These were directly from Karl Marx's manifesto. The Department of Education, instituted under Jimmy Carter, directly from the Communist Manifesto. The EPA, well, there's a new innovation. I mean, that's a very interesting government regulatory organization at the federal level.
We got so many of them right now.
Yeah. And but I mean, the thing is, what else did they do around 1910? They removed the trivium education method from our school system. They replaced it with one that was designed by Hegel, the famous creator of the Hegelian dialectic.
Wow. And
there's a little bit of history there. When Napoleon's troops moved into Prussia, Friedrich Hegel was Prussian. When they moved into Prussia and they demanded that the Prussian troops launch themselves into the withering fire of Napoleon's army, the Prussian troops refused to do so.
Yeah.
Because they had gone to school under the trivium method education, followed by the quadrivium. And a quick overview of that, the trivium is nothing other than grammar, logic, and rhetoric. That's what used to be the basis of our education system before the 20th century, was the trivium method.
Right.
And that simply meant gather your facts, apply logic, understand, learn, and know the logical fallacies, followed by persuasion and rhetoric to get your message across. If you don't learn those things, you can be easily caught off guard by logical fallacies, straw man arguments, appeals to authority, ad veracunum.
Well, let's talk about those. Let me play devil's advocate here then for the subject of they.
Certainly.
The flip side of it is those, that get their information from CNN or wherever. They say, well, how could you really believe that there's such a small group of people that could possibly control this massive chaotic thing we can see here, and all these different people and different cogs and all kinds of greased palms and things happening? How could they constantly or ever be able to You know, because a lot of times we'll go back, like I say, the Titanic. I'll say Titanic was a false flag, no doubt. And then we go into other wars and other false flags and other places. I mean, it just goes on and on. After the Federal Reserve, it's been just a constant warfare. And some people can't buy the fact that, you know, or not the fact, I guess, but the idea that maybe there is a small group, controlling all this, right?
Oh, it is a relatively small group, and again, it's those who have sworn fealty to the Khazar ideal. I mean, in this country, I look to the Bohemian Grove, and there is some interesting Bohemian Grove
you know
members.
What? I got to give it to Alex for that, man. I know Alex has been catching a lot of heat, but man, that was something else when I seen that, and that was a long time ago. I was probably a kid. I was probably a teenager, you know.
Alex Jones, right or wrong, is simply the largest red pill that has ever struck this country.
Yeah, well, some think he is opposition, you know. And I don't know what I think about that. This whole thing with him getting banned and coming back and, you know, the whole orchestrated event, it was like, don't they know by now that this just brings more people out asking why? What the hell's this about, you know? I don't know. It just seemed odd. A lot of things seem odd, though, right?
Oh, yeah, exactly. And, I would just... I lost my train of thought, Rick.
I was asking.
You're going to have to bring me back.
We were talking about Alex Jones and how, you know, how he's done a lot of great things, man. I seen that video of him after Waco, which was a freaking, you know, it was a disaster. He had came up to a FBI guy that was involved, and he was just, you know, unleashing old style Alex Jones. You know, like he doesn't care if he's going to jail. He's going to tell you what he thinks, and he's basically saying one day you're going to burn, basically, you know. And but the Bohemian Grove thing when he snuck in there, you know, that was great. I seen that, and I didn't know what to think about it. You know, I guess that was kind of my descent down into the rabbit hole, if you wanted to say that. But like, really, there's people out in the forest in California, you know, doing this dance around a giant owl statue. What is this?
Oh, yeah, exactly. And that's, you know, what we're looking at. I mean, that was a window into they. The they are the Talmudic Assyrians, the followers of the owl. They've been with us for thousands of years. Yeah. And the thing is they understand tipping points. And, you know, I mean, if they want to get intelligent people out of the community, whatever community you happen to live in, they will simply identify those intelligent people, and they will give them scholarships to Harvard. It's not that hard. If they want to stop scientific advancement, if they want to control the flow of scientific information, they simply instituted the peer review system by Thomas Huxley, who could very easily control it by giving the thumbs up or the thumbs down to any scientific research coming through their purview, so they can control that. You know, they have philosophers that they lionize. I mean, the Pulitzer Prize, the Pulitzer Peace or the Peace Prize, the Nobel Prizes, et cetera, et cetera. If you control the Nobel Prize board, you control exactly which scientific theories or paradigms are advanced. You control which literary figures are advanced. Why would Catcher in the Rye, a clear pedophilic document, be lionized with a Pulitzer Prize and made required reading in high school?
Wasn't the Catcher in the Rye wasn't that the book that's been held by some? Wasn't the guy that assassinated John Lennon holding that when they found him? He was reading it or whatever.
Oh, exactly.
Somebody had pointed that book out as definite monarch mind control type. You find it usually in those cases. I haven't read it honestly, but I know I've heard that guy had it. He was obsessed with that book, and he loved John Lennon, loved him enough to come to his place and shoot him. So. Yeah, exactly. But
you know, I mean, let's if we were to keep it, say, within the last half century, let's look at the personification of they at the moment. I'd say some of our worst actors would be the CIA. You know, the CIA runs all the child trafficking on the planet virtually. They run most of the drug running on the planet is perpetrated by the CIA.
Well, we got a guy here in the chat room that's from Albuquerque, so we're gonna give a shout out to him and just go into that real quick. Did you hear about what happened out there in New Mexico?
I heard that if what you're saying, if I'm catching the drift of what you're saying, it was about the Muslim extremist camp where they were training school shooters.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and they had, they had been let off the hook basically, the judges had let him go, let him free, and it seemed like somebody might have went back in there and destroyed the place, and there was all kinds of weird stuff coming out of there. Like a child was dead. They found a child dead. Then it came out that maybe it was a sacrifice or a ritual. And I think just now the federal DOJ has arrested those guys.
Yeah, it's about time, they understand, the Khazars, the Assyrian Talmudists, down 1,000 generations from where they started in Assyria now, well, a few hundred generations. They understand these little tipping points. Okay, it's a very small compound run by a very few small number of individuals, obviously funded by somebody who is obviously connected to bad actors throughout the world. And can you imagine the level of chaos that they can create just with one small little compound like that?
Oh, yeah, right.
They're tipping points, if you zoom back out, it's a tipping point. They understand tipping points. They understand small bits and pieces that
definitely.
can garner massive amounts of attention, because they also, the Khazars, control the media. Why do you think the media is so viciously against Donald Trump? I would have to direct you to Donald Trump's executive order that says child traffickers and people who misuse charitable funds can have their assets frozen by the federal government.
Yeah.
That is one of the things that got
big executive order. I read it. I know. It was like, what do you do? Well, I got in that conversation with my friend about who believes the whole Russian thing and believes Trump's guilty and he's a spy and whatever. And I said, I don't know what the hell's going on. What am I going to say? Do I look like somebody that's elite? Do I look like somebody that's a politician? And even they probably don't know what's going on. So for me to assume that, but it's very easy to look at and judge the fruits of someone, right? The fruits of someone. And from what I've seen, he's been busting these giant pedophilia rings, human trafficking rings. I mean, I think he's up to, our government has broken up like 6,000. They've had 6,000 arrests, right? In just the last 7 months or so. And
the last reported statistics I heard is that child trafficking arrests are up by 30%, but I cannot imagine it's not much higher than that.
Well, yeah, I mean, some of the years Obama's administration was in office, it was like 1,300 or something. Now Trump's is like 7,000 just this year. This year's not even close to over.
Oh, exactly. And
I have to look at that and I have to say,
well,
I have to look at that and I say, well, not only is it bizarre that there's so many, it's bizarre that this is like finally getting handled, like this was known. I didn't know. Do you want to see they getting their feet cut out from under them? Yes.
They are the Khazars. They are the Assyrian Talmudists. They are psychopaths. They promote psychopathy within their own ranks. The one uniform characteristic of all the various heads of the snake that constitutes they is pedophilia. And if you were going to go after they, the first thing you would do would be to strongly go after pedophilia, because that will lead you to everybody who is on the wrong side.
Well,
because uniformly, they use pedophilia to control each other. If you're a bunch of psychopaths, how do you keep the psychopaths at bay from cutting each other to pieces and thereby advance your agenda? The best way to do it is to make sure that everybody has something so reprehensible on everybody else that they're all in that same club and they know they can't turn each other in.
Yeah, right.
And that would be pedophilia. That's why it's so ubiquitous. That's why finally the Catholic Church, all the way to the very heights of its hierarchy, is getting busted for pedophilia currently.
Yeah, and that's a bizarre thing too, I seen some footage of when these guys would get approached, some of these priests, they just move them around, they don't go to jail or anything. The Catholic Church just moves them somewhere or whatever. They really don't feel like they did anything wrong sometimes. Most of them. They feel like it's just, this carnal thing inside of us that takes hold. And I've asked for forgiveness and whatever, blah, blah, blah. I don't understand that, and a lot of times people say, I don't know what the point of this is when you explain, well, maybe we're being deceived. Maybe this is a lie. And they say, well, what would be the point? You don't have to understand the point. I mean, they're breaking up pedophilia rings. There's people raping children. I can't understand that.
Exactly.
I can't tell you what's behind that. I have no idea. What's behind it. I don't. That's a mental illness to me. I just can't even relate. Right?
Well, psychopathy and sociopathy and dissociation are the keys, and those things. Those are exactly what let's just put it this way. The CIA has been involved, and this is my personal contact with the Men in Black, with the bad guys, with the CIA.
You have been in contact with the Men in Black?
Maybe not. Let's just say it's one of my very close relatives who was taken away from us.
Wow.
And he was taken away as a child, and he was taken away right here to North Dakota.
Wow.
And he was taken away to North Dakota and placed. You notice there's a boys' ranch across from the Air Force Base, both in Grand Forks and Minot.
Okay, up there, yeah.
Yeah, the children at the boys' ranch were being drugged and taken across for experimentation and torture at the Air Force Base.
Holy cow.
And I'm not saying this anecdotally. I'm saying I have the damn papers.
Wow. And
we're getting more information. This is something we're drilling down into. It's really hard. And recently they took him into custody once again, and they slated him for lobotomy. And once again, we had to go get him out of it.
Oh my
because
gosh.
he has information. And that's, like I said, this is something we've been dealing with for nearly 30 years now.
And that is so bizarre because it's not something I can, really say for in my personal life, but I would say that that's probably something many people have dealt with. I mean, it's obvious, that this is going on. There's too many people coming out and saying they're being either gang stalked or whatnot, and it's happened all the time. Especially with these celebrities, or some of these like the rock band group. I think at Linkin Park. Them both committed suicide. These suicides lately. Anthony Bourdain hung. And then who was the next one that hung himself? And just.
Or how about Nicole Kidman's father, Anthony Kidman?
Yeah. Speaking of that, yeah, that's what I had heard. That Stanley Kubrick.
He was busted and outed for child molestation. He immediately fled to Singapore from Australia and jumped out of a balcony window.
Wow. Yeah.
Or at least that's what they reported the first hour. The second hour, they reported he fell down the stairs. And the third hour, they reported he had a heart attack.
Yeah. Huh. Yeah, no telling what they're reporting on. I mean, because these are kind of the big problems, like what you said happened. Is that a family member, a young family member?
Well, he's not too much younger than myself, but he was taken from us at a very young age.
Wow.
And he was taken specifically into the social services system. The social services system,
right.
The military intelligence, and the CIA are perpetrators of pedophilia. They're perpetrators of child experimentation. There's even mainstream books coming out on Cold War experimentation on children currently, which they're admitting to.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's just one simple step further to say that, hey, it went on after the Cold War, Boyd.
Yeah, right.
They didn't stop the program. I mean, once they found people who are psychopathic enough to involve themselves in this kind of behavior for the purposes of quote-unquote experimentation, what they're actually doing is producing psychopathic individuals to create chaos, and chaos is where the Khazars are able to take control.
Well, yeah, because I think about that a lot with MK Ultra. They've found out that trauma, and obviously pedophilia would be trauma, this kind of thing helps split the personality. They can control the personality, right? The trauma is a way of systematically getting somebody to eventually behave the way you want them to. And I feel like they've been doing that to us on a massive level. I mean, 9/11, some of these other, situations, like even just the housing market crash, in 2008 or whenever it was. I mean, that was really traumatic for a lot of people, not so much myself. I mean, I lost my job for a while and such, but some people lost a lot more. They lost stuff that they had spent their whole life trying to get.
The very public execution of John F. Kennedy, the death of the king, archetypically in Jungian terms. I mean, that was a massive psyop right there. And, some very interesting MK Ultra programs. And these are things, when the Church Commission began to examine MK Ultra in the 70s, right, there were some very interesting things coming up. And Alan Dulles very clearly said, sorry, you can't have the MK Ultra documents because we destroyed them. That was when they were subpoenaed by Congress. You know what they forgot to destroy?
What?
They forgot to destroy those damn pay stubs from when they paid people.
Wow.
That's what's come out through Freedom of Information right now. If you look at Jan Irving and the Unspun series, if you want to find out the methodology of the control of the masses, let's forget about who they are for a moment. Let's figure out what they do. The Unspun series on YouTube, 1 through 124 at this point, goes into extreme detail on the methodology that they're using to control people.
Wow. Unspun. Would you say it was Unspun series?
Yeah, it's called Unspun.
Okay. So check
and
that
it's got
out.
120 episodes at this point. I'd recommend everybody check it out. I mean, they range all the way from, I mean, here's an example. How about this? David Crosby from Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young, his dad was military intelligence.
Okay.
Jim Morrison, his dad was Admiral Morrison, who perpetrated the Gulf of Tonkin incident to get us into the Vietnam War.
Yeah.
Let's get even worse. Janis Joplin's fiancé was a CIA agent. Let's go even further. Bob Weir and Phil Lesh from the Grateful Dead, they're members of the Bohemian Grove.
Oh, yeah.
The entire Grateful Dead organization was members of MK Ultra. They were out there throwing LSD into the population for a reason. The reason LSD or hallucinogens are therapeutic is because they're hypersuggestogen.
Yeah.
So what if you dose 100,000 people at once with LSD, and Timothy Leary gets up in front of everybody and yells, "Tune in, turn on, and drop out. Turn your back on this society. Don't try change anything. Just be. Stop acting." That is exactly what they did to an entire generation.
Yeah.
And, you know, as far as the receipts that we've gotten so far, Gordon Wasson, the famous godfather of hallucinogenic mushrooms from the late 50s. Oh, he was part of the MK Ultra Project 58. We have the pay stub.
Yeah.
Gloria Steinem. Gloria Steinem was a CIA agent. Go on YouTube and look at her explanation of how the CIA is really a lovely organization with some beautiful liberal values. That's why I'm a member. And her entire Ms. magazine, if you're familiar with third-wave feminism, first-wave feminism was to get the vote, suffrage. Second-wave feminism was equal rights for women. Third-wave feminism, we hate men.
Yeah, right.
If you want to divide and conquer, what could be possibly the greater holy grail than separating men from women?
Yeah.
At the very family level.
Right. Yeah, that's definitely a sign. It seems like the family's being, attacked for a long time and broken up.
Oh, absolutely.
And it seems like nowadays, when, like, my buddy, he lives in L.A., and he tells me about things going on in Hollywood and how they have jobs and all this industry out there, and you don't really know a lot about that stuff until you're there or you hear from somebody there, and that's kind of like what it seems like the CIA is. They're the workings behind everything, but the executive branch, the White House, it seems like it's just become like maybe just the trailer. Like I feel like the CIA has been mostly the control of everything. I mean, they are the Central Intelligence Agency after all, right?
Yeah, and here's, when people think of the CIA, it begun in 1947, right? The Central Intelligence Agency, it must be a bunch of spies, right? It's not a bunch of spies. That's not who started it. Maybe 20% of the people who started off in the CIA were spook holdovers from the OSS.
Yeah.
You know what the rest of the CIA was? Propaganda experts. Edward Bernays. They were anthropologists. 80% of the anthropologists graduated in America to this day go into the immediate employ of the CIA, and nobody knows about that.
Wow.
What do anthropologists study? Human interaction, human society, human manipulation. That's what the CIA does. Over half their budget is straight propaganda.
Well, they're doing it pretty well, because like I told you before, that person that's in my family circle there, he's pretty smart. He's pretty intelligent. He's always been a good person, and he runs a business. He's pretty successful, and they got him pretty twisted up, man. I mean, to the point where it's sobering, definitely sobering.
Have you ever heard of Silicon Valley Insider?
Is that like possibly?
Silicon Valley Insider is an individual who is currently whistleblowing on not Google, Facebook, etc. I mean, those are the tips of a much larger iceberg. The big ones, Sun Microsystems, Larry Ellison, etc., the real godfathers of the internet.
Yeah.
Those guys are utterly satanic. They're into child rape. They're into child ritual. They're into ritual sacrifice, and that's now coming out through Silicon Valley Insider.
Who's the guy that ran? What is that guy's name? He moved to some island or something. That's
Jeffrey Epstein.
No, not Jeffrey Epstein. This guy, he created Oracle. I believe it was Oracle. Yeah.
Oh, I might not be familiar, Rich.
You'd have to be. Oh gosh, I can't remember the guy's name.
I know what I know, and there is much that I do not.
Yeah. Well, he was involved in all that early Silicon stuff too. I'm pretty sure he developed Oracle. Anyways, yeah, he's a sicko too. They had a documentary about him. Some of these people you just never know. I mean, I see people all the time like upset that they find out something terrible about a celebrity, but it's like we don't even know these people, man. I mean, and that may be part of it too. I mean, you see people, they got these celebrities on movies doing amazing things. You're like, man, that person's amazing. It's fantasy, we know, but it's, we meet them in real life, and that's what we think, right? We think, they're amazing. They can't possibly do things like that.
It takes an awfully lot of people to make you that amazing. Yeah. It takes a lot of people with a lot of skill to give you the appearance of that much amazingness.
Oh yeah, it's definitely
I mean, the whole key to Silicon Valley itself is the fact that Silicon Valley, in its entirety, is an MK Ultra project.
Yeah, I believe
That's
that.
what it was.
Yeah, definitely.
And I'd have to point people towards, this is another Jan Irving article called Manufacturing the Deadhead that details the level of military intelligence involvement in the psychedelic scene in the 60s. It was in its entirety from start to finish. It was an MK Ultra societal modification project.
Right.
How do you think Ken Kesey and this electric microbus of crazy individuals were able to drive all over the country acting just absolutely bizarre, and every police force across the country was told to stand down?
Yeah.
Every single one. That takes some pull, and it comes from the CIA. The CIA was a creation of the Khazars in America to regain control of America.
Well, I can see that. I can definitely see that. That's pretty obvious. CIA's been pretty close to everything. And the things we do know the CIA has done, I mean, it's pretty obvious. Obviously documented. They've done terrible things. I mean, not just terrible things, but we would consider these things to be evil. So we're going to sit here and say, okay, well, there's some good people in there. We're going to fix it. We just need, I don't know what it is that fuels that stuff, obviously, but it's definitely not American. You look at some of these people and wonder if they are Americans, and they must be because they got a lot of Americans fooled. One of them is one of my family members. I mean, he trusts Wolf Blitzer more than he trusts me. We don't even know who Wolf Blitzer is. I mean, hell, his name's Wolf. If
we still taught the trivium method, and not, if you Google trivium, you're going to come up with a heavy metal band. you need to put in trivium method education.
It's amazing we can Google anything and find stuff after.
Exactly. The trivium method, if we still taught that in schools, each and every student would have his own onboard built-in bullshit detector. And you know what? They don't. They teach students to give the right answer to the right question. Pick A, B, C, or D. Don't bother asking whether any of them are relevant or if the question's even relevant.
Right, yeah.
I mean, the first thing, people are like, what can I do about it? I mean, I don't know what's going on, I mean, if I didn't know how to build houses, I wouldn't know what went wrong when the house broke. I know how to build houses. I can fix the house when it's broke. Yeah. How do you fix society when it's broke? What do we do? What's the action plan for this? And I would say the first piece of the action plan for every American, every individual, step one, pull your kids out of public school.
Yeah.
Well, the Department of Education in itself is directly a creation of Karl Marx.
Well,
and it's designed just for that, indoctrination.
We had a discussion about this, too, with someone. And, I mean, that's an obvious point there. It's just hard. I know it's hard for a lot of folks because private school's expensive. Obviously, a lot of parents probably get a great sigh of relief when their kids go off to school. And then when they come home, they said those bastards didn't teach anything, did they?
Yeah, well, the primary person working with this right now, our current Department of Education secretary, the thing she's pushing is vouchers so people can take their kids out of school and put them where they want.
Right.
Yeah, and you can bet the Khazars are going to figure this out, and they're going to subvert many of those outlets. I mean, they obviously subverted the Catholic Church.
I'm sure a lot of what's taught in schools has to go through a filter. I mean, shouldn't kids be able to learn all kinds of things, even if we think they're just ridiculous or whatnot? I mean,
Well, I would point you at what the Portland Public School instituted just last week, which was their citywide social justice warrior focus in their public school system.
Really?
That is what's being taught in Portland Public Schools right now. And then, we got to point to California public schools where they're actually teaching 5-year-old children, 6-year-old children. They're showing them very sympathetic stories, movies, and characters of transgender individuals. And then they lionize any child who will say that he feels maybe he identifies as the opposite sex that he was born as.
Right.
These things are being taught and instituted in the public school system, which is the point of a Department of Education under Karl Marx's Communist Manifesto, is so the state can indoctrinate the children.
Yeah.
That is the key, and homeschooling is an option.
Yeah, definitely.
What's another action plan? Well, the Constitution of the United States is one of the few holdover documents from the Grand Tartary Empire. The Khazars used the Justinian plague, the Black Plagues, to destroy the Tartary Empire.
You're bringing up a lot of stuff that came from this book I once read. It's sitting over here on my bookshelf. It's called of Eden. The gods of Eden. Yeah.
I have not read it. I will have to add that to my list.
Yeah, it's more along the lines that extraterrestrials, quote unquote, are behind the scenes, but it doesn't talk much about that. It's actually a great history lesson because it's bringing up a lot of what you're talking about. Some of these black plagues and some of this stuff, some of these big black plagues and stuff that happened back in the day. I mean, he brings up stuff you don't know about or you don't hear about, like this fog that would roll in on the people, and it would be like a fog that came into the towns. It was like they were being fumigated or something done. And he goes all the way through history, and it is pretty terrifying. I mean, it's been pretty obvious for most, though.
You're over the target when they start talking extraterrestrial. I mean, my book is open, and my judgment is not yet solidified on the extraterrestrial issue. Yeah. I mean, I'd like to see some evidence. If you're going to tell me that there's an alien spacecraft, you better show me a piece of it. I mean, I'm going to have to see something.
I'm with you there, definitely. The big argument is, well, we can't be the only ones alone. There's so much stars and stuff like that, and that's not much of an argument.
Yeah. Look at Pedophile Central, Dulce Air Force Base. That one, the big thing.
You talking about the Dulce underground base?
Exactly, Dulce Underground.
Yeah.
Okay, that's Pedophile Central in the United States, and yet they still just talk about aliens with Dulce. Anyone who's talking about aliens with Dulce is ignoring the fact that it's U.S. incel pedophilia going on under there.
Yeah.
It's programming of children.
Wow.
That's what it is, and as soon as you begin to look at it, as soon as you begin to examine it, right away, let's bring up the aliens. Let's throw in the extraterrestrials.
Yeah.
Let's add that wrinkle. It's not necessary.
Well, there's an interesting interview I've seen with Richard Dawkins, who's the front man for Evolution, and he was being interviewed by a famous guy, and the guy asked him, well, we're starting to get closer and look closer into humans and life, and we see maybe there might be a fingerprint of intelligent design. And he says, yeah, well, that's the case, but it would have, it's possible there was an extraterrestrial presence here that seeded us, and then, but they would have to come from evolutionary terms, right? So I found that kind of telling that, a lot of this Ancient Aliens, I mean, it's a popular show, very popular show. And I see why, because archaeology has always been covered up constantly. I mean,
absolutely.
I mean, they treat the pyramids of Giza like, like a trash dump you can come look at. That place should be, there should be some serious work going on there with, live streams and stuff. People should be informed. It's been just totally. It's just ridiculous. It was what it is. I think anybody can see that.
Oh, yeah. And if you look at the giant, massive, monolithic, polygonal architecture of the Giza Plateau, you also see that in Machu Picchu in Peru. You see it in Pumapunka. You see it in Bolivia.
That's the connection, yeah.
You see the same architecture in the Roman aqueducts. If you think Rome is the greatest Roman city, take a look at St. Petersburg. My God, it dwarfs it.
Yeah.
Yet St. Petersburg was never part of the Roman Empire.
Wow.
And I would say that everybody out there ought to check out the work of A.T. Fomenko, Anatolia Fomenko. If you want to know, Anatolia Fomenko, Fomenko. And all of our history, here's the thing, if Orwell said, if you control the past, you control the future. And he who controls the present controls the past. Right. Now sort that out in your mind. If you can control our perception of history, you can tell everybody where we're going. Yeah. And the key to that whole thing here is that, okay, we consider ourselves an outgrowth of a Greco-Roman civilization, right? I would say that is inherently
absolutely. You can
true.
see that just by looking at Washington, D.C., that we have what looks like Roman architecture, but is it really Roman? I don't know.
I would say it's not really Roman. What we're looking at, the fact that Roman architecture exists far outside the confines of what would be considered the classical Roman Empire, I would say it's part of the Tartar Empire, Grand Tartary.
I have to look up this Tartar stuff, man. I mean, this is the first time I've heard of it.
Yeah, and I'll throw a bombshell at you here. Okay, what if the Roman Empire never existed? What if it was made up out of whole cloth?
Okay.
What if we're not an outgrowth of a Greco-Roman society? What if we're the very shattered remains of Grand Tartary? And here's my, and it's not just somebody who is reinterpreting this pot chart or that pot chart. Let's look at the eclipse tables. Thucydides, theoretically, he was an eyewitness to the Peloponnesian Wars in 500 BC. Now, all right, great. He detailed the appearance and the exact dates of 3 eclipses that occurred during that war. Now, if you get on your eclipse calculator, your astronomy machine on your computer, it comes out completely wrong.
Well, our calendar has been changed. Do you think that would have anything to do with it, or maybe the calculator takes?
No, the calendar. We went to the Julian calendar at exactly the same time, and the exact same individuals. And let's throw this out there. I mean, we know that we've been given copies of the great works of Aristotle and Herodotus, et cetera, these great Roman historians, Roman figures, Greek figures, et cetera. What if every single one of those documents that we theoretically look at as written in stone copies of our heritage, what if every single one of those documents comes from the same exact person? Every single one does. Every single one of those documents, the works of Aristotle, the works of Plato, et cetera, they all come from the same person. Every document has the same story. A copy of the original document was found under the woodbox in a monastery in Scandinavia. And it was then copied by a particular individual named Scaliger in the 14th century. After the copying, the original burned in a library fire. You'll find that is the exact story of every document that is brought down to us from the Roman and Greek tradition. The exact same story. Yeah. And this is detailed by Fomenko. Now you look at the Roman Empire, the list of all the list of the empires, the list of the emperors, the list of the players. You take that list of Roman historical figures of all the dioceses of the popes and all of the lists of the emperors. You can superimpose the royal family lists of Austria. You can superimpose the royal family listings of Germany. You can superimpose them on each other. The names are different. Everything else is exactly the same.
Well, we see that a lot. We see, like, for instance, like on the Giza Plateau, they had that the obelisk, right? That the Pope moved to the Vatican, right?
Yeah, and an identical one was moved to Washington, D.C.
Right, we got one in Washington, D.C.
Trilateral.
Yeah, we got one in D.C. It's the Washington Memorial, and we got one, I think there's one in Paris. There's probably, they're all over the place. That and the architecture and just, some of the symbology that is definitely not what we would say, oh, this is ours, we understand it, it's our heritage. It's definitely like, wow, somebody had a great plan in their head and it was made. Somebody sculpted this. I mean, we see that with murals too, like Denver International Airport's a good example there, all those weird murals and stuff. And
shortly after that place was built, I actually flew into Denver, and there's an interesting thing at Denver, right? You're flying into Denver. The murals are disturbing. The enormous Freemason
the giant
sculpture that's covering, the giant compass that.
Oh, the compass.
The giant compass that's covering the entrance to the catacombs.
Wow.
If you fly into Denver, you see these enormous pyramids of Earth all around.
Yeah.
If you calculate the volume of those pyramids of Earth, you've just calculated the volume that they have taken out from under that airport.
You think so?
Oh, absolutely. That's where they put the dirt.
When you say pyramids of Earth, you're talking about the dirt piles. Oh, because I've heard of those
yes,
too.
They just stacked it up.
Wow.
And who owns all the land around Denver International Airport? Well, that would be the Crown. We're back to the Rothschilds again. The Mile High City looks like a great place to run if you had to have a place to run just in case anything hit the fan.
Well, what's interesting about that is that Tesla did some of his most important discoveries at his lab in Colorado Springs, and it said he's on the mountain. Now, I don't know where he is, but I've been to Colorado Springs, and the only mountain is the one where NORAD's built into, which has an antenna array on top of it that could make you think it was the Aurora Borealis. That's kind of interesting.
Oh, interesting.
That could just be a coincidence, though. But, I mean, then that, and then the Denver International Airport, it's definitely a weird type of thing. And some of the murals, like I think there's a mural in the Bank of America, maybe headquarters, which is odd looking. It's like almost some kind of symbol for that only the initiated can understand, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And Satanism is the key that binds all of these Khazari individuals together.
Yeah, it seems that way.
Satanism is the key, and if you're going to go after Satanism, you have to go after pedophilia.
Well, definitely, and that's my biggest testimony for Trump is seeing that happen, is seeing like a giant pedophile ring in Orlando that got broken up recently. That one, that kind of stuff disturbs me. It's like, usually we look at the people on the streets and homeless people. We're like, oh, I could, we don't want to pick up a hitchhiker. People. They look destitute. They look like they might get desperate and do something. But these real bad people that are after kids, they're working. They're probably our neighbors. They work at our workplaces. I mean, that's just
and it's
a problem, really.
Within our governments and intelligence agencies, it's institutionalized. It's institutionalized in Hollywood. I mean, that stuff is coming out left and right now.
Yeah, that's true.
Look at Macaulay Culkin's band, Underground Pizza. If you've studied Pizzagate at all, you understand that pizza, the John Podesta fascination with pizza and hot dogs is nothing short of amazing.
Well, yeah, that has to go back to Comet Pizza, that place is just... But, I mean, Macaulay Culkin, he was just on Joe Rogan's podcast, and Joe Rogan's like, man, you got it together so well for coming up as a child star. I mean, Joe Rogan complimented him many times about how well he had it together, And he had talked about catching some weird stomach thing. He said it was a bug, or he said it was a worm or something, in Singapore at some place. And I don't know. You hear so much different stuff. You just gotta wonder. I mean, some of these people are used basically because they're under control.
Yeah, look at Kurt Russell. Came out recently that he'd been molested by Walt Disney. And he said, yes, he just came out publicly and said, me and Walt had a relationship and it's none of your business. Wow. But, look at Walt Disney World. Club 33.
The old
Club 33 is a nexus of pedophilia.
What's that?
Right there in the Club 33 in Disney World is the nexus of pedophilia right there in Florida.
Really?
Yeah, the entirety of Disney World is all a Freemason symbology. And Club 33 is one of the worst places in the country. I mean, it's pretty bad in there,
Well, after what happened there in Orlando, they busted some of the Disney World workers with this Trump executive order. I wouldn't doubt it. What's funny is I started looking back at ancient Hebrew. I started to look back at words that were in the books of the Bible that I wanted to see the original intent. And one of the words I came across was Khartome. Khartoum. Sounds a lot like cartoon. It's an ancient Aramaic word which meant, Egyptian occult drawings, Egyptian magicians, magic circles, drawings. Like, it sounds just like cartoon. I'm thinking, man, that sounds familiar. And you look at all the cartoons, and all the wishing upon a star, and the recent ones where they got a guy that's shape-shifting if he's got a staff, and a lot of magic kind of stuff, and
Well, there's the one thing the Khazars want to do is they want to turn everybody away from truth. And when I say truth, I mean objective reality. They want to get everybody mystified. Look at the Christian Book Club. That's a CIA front. One of the most famous Christian books written lately, the Course in Miracles that so many people have been studying.
Yeah,
that was written
I've been hearing a lot about that.
Yeah, they're outed CIA agents.
Okay.
Why is the CIA working so hard to turn Christianity from concrete action to mysticism, where you sit around navel-gazing, learn about it, but don't do anything about it? You know what? They're trying to get everybody to not do something about it. The entirety of the New Age movement. How about that? That's about meditation, navel-gazing, and just be okay with the world. Do not anything you resist persists, right?
Oh, yeah.
No, that's the wrong way to look at it. You know what you're doing there is you're denying the sacred masculine. There's the Father, there's the Son, there's the Holy Spirit, right? The Father and the Holy Spirit in Catholic ideology actually get together and produce the Son. The Father is knowledge. The Mother, the Holy Spirit, is emotion. The Son is action. The Son is action.
Okay.
Everybody's being overwhelmed into inaction.
Yeah. Well, the one thing I have a problem with a lot of times with the story of Jesus is a lot of people say, well, he was a great God, and he was a great guy. Okay, no doubt. But they feel like, oh, we could never do what Jesus did, and we probably couldn't. But a lot of his miracles, it was well known. A lot of his disciples, other people did the same thing. And even he said, you'll do greater things than me, as if hinting that I'm trying to show you how to do this, and a lot of the times all he would say is, all you have to do is just believe. You can't doubt. Why do you doubt?
You can't just believe. You have to act. I mean, people say the truth needs no defense.
Act, but you have to act with intention of believing, right?
Exactly.
I've seen it before, very, very rare moments of time where I've seen somebody, something they've manifested because they believed in it so much, but mostly because they've had a righteous intention, and that seems to be part of it too. But
no, I mean, there's the old saying, when preparation meets opportunity, that's what you call luck.
yeah, or coincidence, right? We see a lot of coincidence, but.
I'm not a fan of coincidence. I just, coincidence theory though is the alternative to conspiracy theory. When people say when you're getting close to something, people when you're getting close to the truth, you're labeled a conspiracy theorist.
Oh yeah.
Well, I mean, how about every single musical icon of the '60s being a son of a military intelligence officer? Well, that's coincidence that begins to shred the imagination. So I would say coincidence theory holds true.
Yeah, well, a lot of these musicians and stuff, they got a lot of weird events revolving around them. Just the way they've passed away or what they've done in public. Definitely, like Jay-Z, he's pretty well known for his Satanist T-shirts. So,
yeah. And they're trying to normalize Satanism. The current push from the LGBT community is to normalize pedophilia. And that's one thing Trump is standing against. I mean, if you normalize pedophilia, you normalize Satanism.
Well,
the fundamental tenet. Oh, go ahead.
I've been told this before, not with pedophilia, but with other things that I'm like, I just don't. I'm not going to go there. But they would say, well, you don't understand it. These people, they feel it. They know it's right. So you need to be okay with it. You need to tolerate it, And that's just been the patient gradualism upon us. Where's it going? Where's the fine line?
Who could be the more innocent victim than a child? And that's the key to Satanism, is when they do a sacrifice, when they do a ritual, when they do a rape, the more innocent the victim, the more points they get.
Yeah,
that is the key to it. I mean, we're going to victimize a 5-year-old child, a 1-year-old child, a 6-year-old child. How about in South Africa, where the leader announced that if you have sex with a virgin, that it'll cure your AIDS? So a lot of people with AIDS are raping children. Wow. Awesome. What an outstanding idea there.
This website where we hosted the podcast off of, or posted it, godlikeproductions.com. They got an article here at the top right now. It says South Africa is descending into chaos, and there's a total media blackout. They have videos sent in by concerned South Africans. That whole situation is kind of odd the way it came about, you know.
Well, I mean, let's look at where this situation came from. Okay, apartheid's horrible in South Africa. Yes, apartheid is horrible in South Africa. Yes, it's probably unjust, all right? And then they went through this big détente thing, and then they put Nelson Mandela and Winnie Mandela in charge of the country. Now, there's a reason Amnesty International refused to go to the aid of Nelson and Winnie Mandela.
Yeah, and now we have the Mandela effect, so...
Yeah, Nelson and Winnie Mandela are known terrorists. They planted bombs in areas, killed children. Winnie Mandela is famous for her necklace, where you take a tire full of barbed wire and diesel fuel, and you put it around the neck of your political opponent, and you light it on fire. That's what Winnie Mandela is famous for. And these people were lionized in the media, and they completely ignored this. Now you start and you know what? Nelson Mandela immediately took the country into socialism.
Yeah.
Socialism equals Satanism. The tenets of socialism and the tenets of Satanism are exactly the same. We have moral relativism. You have eugenics.
Yeah.
You have social Darwinism, and you have narcissism. Those are the fundamental tenets.
Well,
win at all costs. There is no right or wrong. There is only power.
Yeah, and there's a lot of the utopian thing of universal basic income and stuff, you know, which people say is the solution to automation taking over, but I can't imagine that's going to help.
If you're going to push a horrible ideology with a horrible result, but you firmly believe that you want to be with that kind of control, are you going to tell everybody that, hey, I'm going to institute this form of government and I'm going to screw everybody over? No. You're going to institute your form of government. You're going to tell everyone how wonderful it's going to be, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We're going to have free Medicare. We're going to have free health care. We're going to have free food. Everybody will have a guaranteed income, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah,
you know?
Right.
And I have friends friends I've known for decades, from the time I was a child, who are absolute socialist ideologues at this point. There is no chink in that armor.
Too, that socialism could work. It could work. It could work. And I say,
I
it could work if you had a bunch of people that weren't, so corruptible.
I think Argentina just collapsed yesterday. If you give the government ultimate power, what are the odds that somebody in that position with ultimate power, you're trusting those people?
No, you can't
be on your side.
Yeah.
That's why we have checks, balances. Our Constitution comes down to us from the Tartars.
Yeah.
That's where our Constitution comes from. And we can, we can use the Constitution as a litmus test. And you might say, hey, I don't have time to go through every law that's passed by every lawmaker to figure out the constitutionality of it on a legal grounds, right? Well, there's organizations that do that and give ratings to every congressman based on their constitutionality. And if you want to, the John Birch Society, right?
Mm-hmm.
Jump in with the John Birch Society. They simply rate every congressman on constitutional grounds. Are they constitutional? To what percentage are they? And they go through each and every law, and they say, this is the portion that's constitutional, this is why. This is the portion that's unconstitutional, this is why. And then, with that list, you can go, and they give a percentage rating to every single legislator. This legislator is 55% constitutional. This legislator is 12% constitutional. You can just take that rating system, run on up to your local legislator in their town hall meetings they have.
Yeah.
Make a few copies of that. Give them out to people. Wear a suit. Give them out to people at the door as they come in.
Right. Well,
suddenly everybody in the.
Did you see that new IRS building they built? I think it was in Maryland.
Oh my goodness, I missed it. I can hardly wait.
No, well, it has this crazy symbology. It's got two giant pillars with two hands pointing to the sky, a giant pyramid in the middle. Probably, 7 feet high, not too big, but the important thing is they got a plaque there that was interesting, and I think they were talking about the 13th Amendment, that it was not, I can't remember what the plaque says, and it's really hard to find the pictures of this building, but yeah, here it is. Here's the pyramid.
If the 13th Amendment is the one that was theoretically to ratify the IRS,
Let's see here.
And I don't recall what the number of that one was, but only 35 states ever ratified that amendment. It was never fully ratified.
Okay, so that's what it's talking about then. Yeah, so
yeah, but I was,
I'm pulling this up for the streamers, but this article's over at Vigilant Citizen, and yeah, see, they got a giant pyramid, and I'm looking for that plaque. There it is, okay. The Bill of Rights, Bill of Rights was not ordained by nature or God. It's very human, very fragile. That's what it says. I don't know where I got the.
It's not ordained by God. I
Bill
believe
of
it
Rights
inherently
was
says
not
the Bill of Rights.
ordained by nature or God. It's very human, very fragile. Why would that be at an IRS place? Huh? I don't know.
Well, I would say, because of the fact that the Bill of Rights specifically states that these rights are granted by our Creator and are unalienable.
Yeah.
I would say that the IRS has taken a pot shot at the very basis of the Bill of Rights, because we have a very unique thing in America. One of the unique things in America and certain other of the former British colonies is that our laws are based on English common law. English common law is specifically based on the King James Bible explicitly. That is what they say.
Yeah.
Now, the interesting thing about common law is that is what the essential tenet there is, that we are made in God's image. Regardless of what you think about Christianity or anything else, the fact that our laws, the fact that we are not supposed to be able to be harassed by government because we are part divine, that's a very important little detail in the basis of our laws. So, declare yourself an atheist at your own risk.
Well, like the Declaration of Independence points out, we find these rights to be, great truths.
Self-evident.
Self-evident truths. Which is a great way of putting it, because it is self-evident.
Self-evident means it's part of natural law.
Yeah.
In other words, they're saying if you walk off the cliff, you will fall down. That's called natural law.
Yeah.
Another aspect of natural law, if you stick your head in the sand, humans are designed in such a way that if your head is in the sand, you're on your knees and your ass is in the air.
Yeah.
That is natural law.
Yep.
And Mark Passio does a very good job on YouTube of discussing natural law and how this relates to human behavior, how it relates to the basis of our legal system.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot to that, too. We look at it as, it's just definitely gone the wrong direction so many times. Andrew Jackson fought the central banks a lot, right? Or he fought people that were trying to do it. But it seems like after we get the Federal Reserve and after all this stuff comes about, it's just completely got out of control. But people will tell you that, oh no, it's the best it's ever been right now. It's the best it's ever been. More people are living in better conditions now, than ever before in history. And it's a pretty big statement for people that, don't even know what the pyramids are.
Yeah, well, it's true that fewer people are in poverty. The key to that is that India and China made free market reforms earlier at the early part of this century.
Yeah.
And once they made those free market reforms, literally hundreds of millions of people in those two countries, the most populous in the world, came out of abject poverty. That's where the poverty statistics come from.
Okay. Well, we can just look at the worldwide poverty. Most of us, even if you don't make a whole lot, you make $40,000 a year, you're a lot richer than the rest of the world, that's for sure.
Yeah, if you're in America, you're one of the 1%. And people like to say that in America we stole everything, that's why we're rich. No, we're not. We're rich because we're a capitalist country, and our individuals, those individuals with the spark of divine in our country, have been allowed to keep their wealth.
Oh yeah.
That is why we're a rich country.
Well, a lot of our wealth's been siphoned off too. You think about every great invention that's come out of America, right? Well, hell, we learned to fly the airplane. We learned what? Automobile pretty much came out here. A lot of electrical advancements came out of here. All kinds of stuff. The internet, computers, all kinds of stuff came from right here in America. A lot of it, anyways. And
yeah,
those are all kind of those are all kind of testaments to the freedom of being able to be free in the mind and do what you please and search out, inventions if you want to. I mean, that's kind of what it is. But now all those kind of things are made in other places, like China, where they treat their people like, prisoners. I mean,
well, China's in violation of the WTO. You're not allowed to subsidize under international trading regulations. You're not allowed to use slave labor in your factories.
Yeah, and I mean, the thing there is, well, people say, oh, well, you want us to make it here because we won't be able to afford it. That's how we can afford it. And I just don't feel that's an excuse, because it feels like we're sending our money that way. We're buying things from them because it's cheaper. But you know why it's cheaper? It's like, well, it's cheaper because it's,
they're using slave labor.
Right, it's like buying stuff from a place that uses a bunch of kids to build it. I mean, it's a lot cheaper, so I'm saving $1. But what am I furthering? You're furthering communism. You're furthering, Google and Apple. Now they're helping China, keep the Great Firewall up, so the internet's censored over there. I mean, those are companies that were made here.
Google did just remove the "Don't be evil" part of their corporate charter. They did remove that this year.
Okay. I thought it had been gone a long time, but I remember.
Oh, okay. I thought that was this year, but anyway, they're not allowed to be evil by corporate charter. So
okay, I was just wondering about that. And
they can be evil now.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I kind of figured that, but that's the one thing I noticed about them when Google first hit the scene. It was like, "Don't be evil." That's a good. Hey. That disappeared long ago. I think maybe they took it off their site and stuff, but yeah, as far as the corporate charter, I'm not sure. But you can't become a giant megalithic corporation like Google, Alphabet, whatever you want to call it, with that kind of motto. That's just not going to work, right?
Here's the thing. They say Google's a private company. We built Google. I was on the first DARPA net back in those days. I was Raider O'Reilly in the military, and I did, pay and mail, and I had to log in online back through DOS to go to Kansas City and do pay and mail. And that was the original DARPA net, military connections connected through the universities, et cetera, et cetera. We built and we own the Internet with our tax dollars. Google is just a front company that's been put up over that. I mean, we bought and paid for Google. We bought and paid for the entire Internet. There's no reason.
Well, what do you mean by that? Because Google's just kind of a service thing, but they probably have helped build a lot of the infrastructure, huh?
Oh yeah, I mean, since that time. I mean, in the original inception, in the early '90s of, say, the public Internet. All of that was stuff, the underpinnings of the entire thing were put together, produced, and built with American tax dollars.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Because it was DARPA.
And it was started by Al Gore, right?
Oh, yeah. Well, technically, there's a subtext to that.
Al Gore's pretty amazing. He's like the most interesting man in the world.
Oh, geez, yeah.
His new movie in the theater did so good. It was almost as good as Kevin Spacey's new movie, right?
No, Dinesh D'Souza just came out with a new movie.
Death of the Nation.
I would consider Dinesh D'Souza to have been a political prisoner of Obama's.
That's what I heard. He went to jail for the Hillary one, didn't he? Or was it
exactly. I mean, he was thrown in. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, good on him. And that's another kind of fruit we can see from Trump is that, he's kind of. I don't know. We've seen so many presidents come that just are like, oh, well, Obama, he's a black guy. He's a brother, man. He's going to help us out. He's going to get some of these things straight. No, he's just the same guy. And Trump's definitely different. That's for sure. How do you feel about what Bill Gates said about Trump?
I might not have heard it.
Okay.
What did he say?
He went to meet Trump at Trump Tower during the whole, transition before he was, before he did his inauguration. Bill Gates went and met him, and Bill Gates came downstairs. The media was talking to him. They asked him what he thought, and Bill Gates said he's the new JFK.
I would classify Trump exactly the same way.
Yeah,
but he's not making a terminal mistake that JFK made. JFK publicly announced he was going to shatter the CIA, and he also took aim at military intelligence and the FBI and everybody at the same time. Donald Trump didn't make that same mistake. Donald Trump is enjoying the protection of certain elements of our military intelligence and the United States Marine Corps.
Well, that's the one thing.
And he's going.
One thing I
going
worried
after
about
the CIA singularly.
One thing I worried about was like the Secret Service. It was started to be a currency, like if people were trying to copy the dollar or mess with the currency at all, the Secret Service was there to handle that. Then they slowly became the security apparatus for the president or the presidential office. And I've heard before that's like they're basically they hold the president hostage. They're not there to guard him, just to keep him, in power or whatever. But
yeah, President Trump has his own security.
Yeah, that's what I found out, is that he had his own whole. He's got like a bunch of retired police officers and stuff. And I mean, they did that one drill in New York City. People were freaking out because there's that plane flying low, and it was a military plane. They were doing an operation in case they had to pull him out. And so there's definitely a military aspect behind him for sure. It's like I told my one friend, I said, hey, if Trump was just some dude with his golf buddies that said, yeah, you're going to run this department, you run this, we're going to do this, man. I mean, they would have had him blown away a long time ago.
Yeah, well, Trump has a pedigree, too. I mean, let's look at John G. Trump. His uncle, John G. Trump, was the protege of Vannevar Bush, who was deeply involved in the original NSA. Now, you want to go back to the work of Peter Delshow, which are bizarre pictures of aerial vehicles relating to the airship flap of airship sightings at the turn of the century, and Homer Trump's name is listed on those. So Trump goes back a ways.
What do you mean airship flaps?
Oh, the great airship sightings of 1898, 1897. The airships were seen all over the country, traveling
about,
fast.
UFOs or what are they?
Well, I mean, people throw them in the UFO category, but really it's a bunch of Prussians and Germans. The Sonoran Aero Club. This was an entire apparatus designed to produce what looks like, say, the precursors to electrogravitic craft earlier or later in the last century.
Yeah. Well, that's definitely going on. I mean,
yeah,
but I mean, 60 years between the point where we first took flight and the point where we landed on the moon. So,
yeah, but I mean, the point being there that Homer Trump was involved in the Sonoran Aero Club, which was involved in the airship flaps of the late 1800s, and John G. Trump was a very close confidant protege of Vannevar Bush, who was deeply involved in America's electrogravitic intelligence apparatus. Donald Trump's not an outsider in that respect. He's just enough of an insider that he might have a chance of not getting wiped out.
Yeah, well, there's the other aspect of it too is the way he had this kind of ability to kind of tell the way things were going to happen. A lot of people, like on the Donald subreddit, they would say, "Oh, he knows the future. The future's on his side." And I think they even found some book that mentioned Barron Trump and Donald Trump, something like that. But
that was something that was written back in the 1890s. It was a book about President Trump and his adventures with his son Barron. I haven't studied it that much.
Right, I haven't either. But that brings me back to the Titanic, man, because the Titanic had a book, or there was a book written about the Titanic. It was called The Titan, and it was I think it was 20 years before the Titanic, and it hit an iceberg. It sank around the same time. It had not enough lifeboats. Almost so many similarities.
Heard of that. It's pretty fascinating.
That's just crazy to me that's not a coincidence, is it? That's like either somebody has the ability to foreseen something, or I don't know. Maybe it's their way, or their way of planning out how they're gonna take some action. I don't know. It feels like they do that sometimes. They throw it in our face and say, "This is what's going to happen. Hope you enjoy it."
I quite honestly don't know exactly what to think about that, because people quite clearly have detailed events from future times from their own at various points in history, and they've been spot on, right on the nail.
Yeah, that's true.
And other times, 99% of people who predict things are absolutely wrong.
Right. Yeah.
The end is nigh. The world's going to end on August 24th. Sell all of your possessions and give me the money.
Yeah, we've seen that a lot, definitely.
Exactly. I mean, I had
2012 and.
Yeah, I had in-laws who sold possessions and gave it to TV preachers and so forth. And,
wow.
And of course, Cousin Eddie on National Lampoon's Vacation also gave an awfully lot of money to a TV preacher.
Did he? Yeah. Isn't he running from the Hollywood Killers, right? That guy.
What's that?
Cousin Eddie from National Lampoons. What's his?
Yes, he is running away.
Yeah, he went to like Canada or something. Yeah, man. That guy's got a Twitter. It's pretty interesting, some of his videos. He's a big Trump supporter, too. He's kind of an interesting fellow. But...
And, I would have I have a strong suspicion that, if you're a big player, if you somehow gain credibility or you gain some kind of status in Hollywood, at that point in time, they try to bring you into the club. Like Meryl Streep, she's the grand dame of Hollywood, and that's a satanic term. It's a very coveted position, and she keeps coming up in child molestation cases, in child ritual cases, in all these things.
Yeah.
Various other icons in Hollywood, and that's why they're all throwing, I heard they put their money together and are now donating $30-some million to Democratic candidates to put this genie back in the bottle.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah.
And like I say, the genie that's going back, that they're trying to put back in the bottle is the prosecution of pedophiles.
Yeah. Well, they're not prosecuted enough, that's for sure, because we still got them walking around.
Exactly. But, we have a Department of Justice currently that refuses to prosecute. We're working on it. That's what all the sealed indictments in Utah, the Huber indictments, those are most likely pedophilia cases.
Well, yeah, that comes back to the QAnon stuff, The whole thing with them is trust Sessions, trust the plan, right? And then you got the people over on the Donald subreddit who are the mainstream Donald supporters who are like, these people, you're screwing with us. Sessions is the bad guy. Screw Sessions.
I always like to see some evidence. I have not seen evidence of Sessions doing anything other than hiding under his desk yet.
Yeah, it could be that way.
He may
they're
be
back and forth on Twitter between him.
Surprise us all.
Yeah, well, between him and Trump, back and forth, and on Twitter, it's pretty. I don't know. It's Q says, "Oh well, it's good. What makes a good movie? Great actors."
Yeah, I mean, if I was going to run a game where I was doing something like that, I would do exactly what Sessions and Trump are doing. On the other hand, if Sessions is doing nothing good and just wasting our time, that's also exactly what it looks like. So it could be either one,
Right.
I mean, for a while I was wondering if Robert Mueller was on our side because he was making such egregious errors. And he's continued to do so.
On our side.
Oh, no, I think he certainly isn't. I mean, Robert Mueller famously was the FBI director who covered up 9/11.
Yeah. Well,
him and Comey have been...
too, is because one of the things with Q is that the number 17 keeps coming up. Trump will keep, he'll keep stating, he'll be at a rally, he'll say, I've been to D.C. 17 times. And he'll say this over and over again. And a lot of different 17 numerology, which is, gematria for Q. And this 9/11, which is in, 11 days now, 9/11/2018, is 17 years. The 17th year anniversary. So that's Q, huh?
You sent me that 17 too, Rich, and I did not actually get to it. I went off and built a house for a while, and I really left my information stream for a little bit here.
Hey, you got to do that every once in a while, man, or else you'll get. I don't know. You got to take a break. I even know people that have just completely cut it all. I mean. They'll ask me, why are the flags at half-staff today? I'll be like, oh, man, school shooting or whatever happened. They're just completely, they can't take it. It's driving them nuts.
For years I've been delving into this stuff, and I'd take deep dives in. I would get to the point where I felt icky and disgusted by it, and I'd jump out and read a science fiction novel, and I kept on coming back. And, now at this time in my life, I'm a half century old at this point. Now I can sit there and stare right into the face of it all day, every day.
Well, that's a lot of the way I think people are. I think this is the first presidency where a lot of people have said, wow, I know what a State of the Union address is now. Or I know, that Trump picks these people, and, the senators have to authorize it, and they're
I'm very encouraged by the higher level of involvement. You know how they say ignorance of the law is no exception. Let's break that word ignorance down, okay? Ignorance. In other words, what they're saying and what they're telling you right there on the surface is that if the knowledge is available, which it is, it's all public information, and you do not take the time to go and look at it, that is no exception to the law being used on you.
Yeah.
In other words, all this stuff is available, and Americans have to stop ignoring what is available out there. And they're going to have to, and if we still had the trivium method education in school, people would be able to use their bullshit detectors to check all this information right on the surface. I mean, now if I see a newscast after studying the trivium method for a little while, and I'm not even very good at it yet, quite frankly, but I did have logic in college, so that helped.
Yeah.
I can sit there and tell you in a lot of cases exactly what logical fallacy they're using to deceive people, just watching people talking on the surface.
Right.
And that's what the value of the trivium method is that people can be lying to you, people can be talking to you, and you'll see it right away. You'll know exactly what they're doing, and you'll know why they're doing it, and you'll be able right away from that point to be able to parse and understand what they're covering up.
That's good. That's good. Yeah, more people need to do that. I think that's happening a lot more. I mean, even now when some big event happens, when a big event happens and the media is definitely all over it, people are thinking, well, what else is going on? What are they trying to fuse me for, What's the enemy doing? Oh, they hate it that they're being chanted at fake news.
Yeah, I'm encouraged by people's increasing involvement and understanding of government.
Well, definitely.
I mean, let's break the word government down. Govern, to control, mente, mental, the mind. To control the mind is what the word government means.
Well, that's
control the mind.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I mean, they've been involved in so much propaganda and Hollywood. I mean, Hollywood. And, some of these movies are probably funded by a lot of these, interesting characters. They say Facebook was started by CIA, that they had just coincidentally canceled or ended a research project right when Facebook got going that was along the same lines.
And if you notice the story behind
Keystone that brought us Google Maps, that was sort of came out from that too. So
the real Silicon Valley power, let's just say Sun Microsystems, Larry Ellison, etc., Cisco, these guys simply pick a guy to anoint. The guy they anoint is of the bloodline of the Khazari. You take Bill Gates. Bill Gates wasn't even a computer programmer. He bought Windows from a guy down the street, and they anointed Bill Gates as the guy because of his family pedigree. Bill Gates' grandfather is the guy who did eugenics work for Adolf Hitler.
Wow.
I mean, he's the guy who came up with all that. Zuckerberg, he's just a face man. It doesn't matter. He's the right family name at the right time, and they all have the same. If I see the same story 500 times, dropped out of Harvard, made $1 trillion on this new app I created. How many people have created new apps? How many of them get ahead? Very few. Look at the ones who immediately make $1 billion overnight. Just check out their family history, check out their pedigree, check out where they come from and who they're connected to. Oftentimes, they're just military intel plans. And if they screw up, they can be replaced tomorrow by Facebook too or somebody else.
Right. Yeah, I mean that's interesting. When virtual reality first came out, I was really into it. I
recall taking a ride on your machine.
That's right. Yeah, I actually have the newer one, but the guy that started it was a kid, like Palmer Luckey, and he had help with the guy that he started Doom. I can't remember his name now, but anyways, Palmer Luckey, he had sold Oculus to Facebook for a couple billion or whatever, and he made a lot of money. Then it came out, he was still working with Facebook, obviously, the founder, but it came out later that he was running some campaign, Nimble America, I think it was. He was a big Trump supporter, and they outed him for it, doxed him somehow, and Mark Zuckerberg ended up firing him. That was all talked about in the congressional hearings, but I had remembered that, and it's just kind of funny how, we see some of these people come out of the shadows, and they have a great idea, and it gets bought up very quickly, and now it's a Facebook headset. Well, I don't want a Facebook headset. I don't trust Facebook. I don't have a Facebook account, so.
And they scooped up a hell of a lot more of these ideas when they dropped the Malaysian Airlines flight into the Indian Ocean.
Okay, you got to tell me this. What do you mean by that?
Oh, some of the world's most brilliant minds in artificial intelligence, 70 of them were on that aircraft, and they just come from a conference.
Wow, okay. I didn't know that. So I've heard of I didn't research it. Sorry.
Oh, yeah. This is a little bit, sort of a segue. Sorry.
Well, isn't that the one that they're having trouble finding? or have they found it?
Oh, exactly. Yeah, the famous Malaysian Airlines flight. And there's more to this. This connects back to Russia also in a way. So some of the world's preeminent AI scientists who together held some of the most important and most numerous patents in artificial intelligence were all wiped out at once.
Wow.
And very quickly, all their patents reverted to the companies, and those patents that were still held by their families were then basically swooped in and scooped up and bought up from the grieving families.
Wow.
No, officially they never did find that aircraft, correct?
I don't think so. No, I don't think they did. In fact, I think there's a lot of weird stuff that happened. I think there was a ship that went out there. When I bring on guests, and the ship went off the radar for 4 days or something.
Not understand.
They thought the ship had been lost, and it came back. All of a sudden, the people didn't know what they had amnesia or something. It was like a lot of mystery surrounding this. I mean, it is a big topic. I haven't GLP in a way.
I know a few things. I have a bit of the mystery that maybe most people haven't heard, but I did catch this, and I caught this in 2 pieces on the mainstream news that I think got through that nobody stopped.
Okay.
One of the things is, you recall the Malaysian Airlines flight that was shot down over Ukraine, correct?
I remember that, yeah.
Okay. The mainstream news reported that, coincidentally, this is the sister ship of the aircraft that went down in the Indian Ocean, right? So what they say when Boeing makes an aircraft, they make 2 at the same time in the same hangar, so they kind of double their money on the same situation, right?
Right.
And so coincidentally, one of them went down in the Indian Ocean with the world's preeminent AI scientists and patent holders on it, and then the other one was shot down by the Russians, right? Now, there's something I saw on the televised coverage of the aircraft that had been shot down over Ukraine. And this is really weird, and I don't know if anyone else caught this, so this may be something that nobody else knows other than you and me as of about 30 seconds from now.
Okay.
But, okay, so the mainstream news was showing people in Ukraine, Ukrainian citizens, who were cleaning up the wreckage of this Ukrainian Airlines flight, right?
Right.
And they were, and the people were talking in Ukrainian. I suppose that's Russian or Ukrainian. I don't recognize the language.
Yeah,
and they were showing translations on the bottom of the screen of what these people were saying, right?
Right.
Well, then all of a sudden one person comes up and they spoke in English. And what the person in English said is the bodies are already decomposed, they're rotting.
Huh. Wow.
So I would suggest that if you put those couple of things together, the Malaysian Airlines flight that disappeared over the Indian Ocean was lofted high in the air with no cabin pressure to kill everybody on board, probably by remote control, because every airliner has remote control via the CIA, every single one. And then it was simply flown around for a little while, hidden somewhere, and then it was flown from Denmark over Ukraine with the intention that it be shot down to dispose of the bodies. However, one person actually said in English on television while I was watching, the bodies are rotted. They're already decomposing.
Wow. I wonder if somebody can dig that up. We'll have to find
Maybe. I'm not sure if it's diggable, but they certainly should be able to find out that both of those aircraft are sister ships produced in the same hangar on the same day.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Maybe if someone out there can figure that one out. I mean, maybe Malaysian Airlines flight disappearance is solved. It was simply shot down over Ukraine to get rid of the body. To disappear the evidence.
Malaysian plane, bodies decomposing. Let's pull this up.
Yeah, I mean, I can't be the only person who saw that.
It looks like they have it here. Hold on, let's see. I'll pull it up on.
I actually saw that in real time, and I don't watch much news, so I can't be the only one who saw that.
Manipulated in any way, but there's lots of it. The crash area is very, very big, but we were only given a very small area to actually monitor. And we were greeted almost with hostility. So it wasn't a visit that was done under the best conditions, and we hope to continue again tomorrow. What we observed were already bodies starting to partially decompose in the hot sun. We saw
bodies that were already starting to decompose.
Doesn't look like it's been manipulated.
Okay, yeah, now just combine that with the idea that coincidentally it is exactly the sister ship of the other one that went down.
Yeah, that is.
And suddenly it looks like there's our airline, you know. And what did they do? Why did they do that? They did it to take the patents from the artificial intelligence scientists.
Dang! Wow.
I think we can sew that one up, maybe. I mean, obviously, I'm not a researcher. I'm a guy who collects a lot of information and listens to a lot of things.
Well, as everybody would know, the best information we get aren't from researchers. Otherwise, this whole world would probably be awake. But
yeah, and I can't count myself as a researcher, but I do have a lot of time trucking through midnight with the ability to listen to lots of stuff.
I think we can safely assume you are one. I think we all are, kind of, when we search for the truth.
Yeah, we're all in this. We're all in the undertow together.
Yeah, definitely. And that kind of brings up the idea of they, and there's the theory of the hidden hand theory, which is that they, or the ones we can see, the ones that are in control, the Trumps and the Hillarys and the Obamas and stuff, and some are on the good side, some are on the bad side. That depends on where you stand too, but that they're all working together. And that.
Yeah, I would say that it doesn't depend on where you stand. It entirely depends on whether you're a moral relativist.
Yeah, well...
Is there right and is there wrong? I look at things as right and wrong. Right. And I always will, I always have.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and like the Star Wars ideology in some ways, the famous quote, it's the truth from a certain point of view. It's like, no, it's not. It's right or wrong. It's not a certain point of view.
Yeah. Well,
this goes into
a lot of what I seen during the election was, like Trump signs getting tore up. People were on Twitter bragging about how many times they went out and voted. They're going out again to vote for Hillary.
And that's
running
wrong.
on people's property or assaulting somebody, they're breaking the law, but they thought it was the right thing to do. They felt it was. They would never tell you it's the wrong thing. It's the right thing to do because, my ideas need to get through,
exactly. But I mean, a lot of times conservatives or real Republicans, not really what I would say are our fat cat globalist rhinos that we have so many of. But conservatives always think that somehow this is a war of ideas. And they say this is, you're doing something wrong. This is the result. This is the idea. And they're shocked when they're faced with people who are battling a war of ideology.
Right.
Yeah. That's why my friends will not accept any factual data outside of socialism. They absolutely will not accept. I mean, hey, socialism may be the most deadly ideology we ever developed.
I bring up WikiLeaks so much to my one friend, and he's like, well, isn't WikiLeaks, wasn't that part of Russia? Weren't they on Trump's side? That's kind of biased, huh? That WikiLeaks was on Trump's side, right?
I don't know that information has a side.
I don't think the DNC ever came out and said those aren't our emails. In fact, I think it was pretty well known. I think everybody just accepted it. I mean, even the media was like, ooh. Nobody ever came out and tried to say that. So what does it matter? Whose side? WikiLeaks just released, I think, the home addresses of ICE agents not too long ago. I don't know what WikiLeaks is. Maybe
it wasn't
compromised.
WikiLeaks, I believe.
It wasn't? Okay.
Yeah, I think the ICE agents' names and addresses were released by one of the Antifa-style organizations.
Okay, yeah, see, here I go.
But, everybody's, this goes back to the war. I mean, if you think you're in a war of ideas and you're fighting against people who are in a war of ideology, you're going to lose unless you ratchet that up. Yeah. So you got to understand the tactics and the reasoning behind what they're doing. So I think everybody out there should go get themselves a copy of Saul Alinsky's Rules for Radicals. Saul Alinsky was Hillary's mentor in college, and Hillary wrote her dissertation on Saul Alinsky.
Okay.
So go get Saul Alinsky's Rules for Radicals. These are the tactics they're using. If you're doing something, accuse your opponent of doing it.
Yeah, projection. We see that all the time.
Yeah, or how about the Ku Klux Klan? It is, was, always has been a Democrat organization, a militant arm of the Democrat Party. How is it that now, just in the last few years, everyone thinks they're Republican? Well, that's due to Saul Alinsky. It's one of his best. He crows about it. It was one of his finest hours, he said. Yeah. He had some students who were carrying signs that said Republicans are KKK at Republican gatherings, right? So Saul Alinsky says, don't do that. Right. Dress up as KK, dress up in the suit, the KKK, the whole white hood and everything, and just go to Republican rallies and Republican political events, and every time they say anything, jump up and down and cheer.
Yeah.
And the media picked it up, and wham, suddenly the KKK is Republican, when it had always been Democrat. And Woodrow Wilson, the guy who brought us the Federal Reserve, the IRS, and the income tax is the same guy who revived the completely outlawed KKK by screening the birth of a nation in the White House.
Wow. Yeah.
That was Woodrow Wilson, one of our first progressive presidents.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, man.
Those are the tactics they're using, Rich.
Yeah.
I mean, they're not fighting fair. They're not talking about ideas. They're not discussing the finer points of intellectual rationality here. They're battling an ideological war. And they admit right out the gate, hey, we have no morals. That is their starting point. We don't have any morals. And one of the points of Saul Alinsky, use your opponent's morals against him. That's one of the things Saul Alinsky said.
Well,
now, Hillary Clinton decided that her dissertation was how Saul Alinsky was working from the outside trying to change society, and she said that's absolutely wrong. What you need to do is get inside and then use Saul Alinsky's tactics.
Yeah. Well, I think there's some definite blindness in people. And the funny thing was when I told you about talking to my friend, you know, he mentioned this song that he was singing with his sons, and he tried to remember the name of the song. He sang it for me, and I remembered it. And it's sung by a band called Third Eye Blind, which is, you know, it was almost like an omen, you know, in a way, like Third Eye Blind. You know? Yeah, I know all about that song, you know, because there's a lot to that with you know, the pineal gland. You know, a lot of people think, you know, it's kind of like our third eye, and that they try to calcify it with fluoride supposedly, and other, you know, the Vatican has a giant pine cone statue that kind of symbolizes.
I have seen that. Yeah, it is interesting.
The pineal gland also, if you were to split the brain in half and open it from a side view and look at the pineal gland, it looks a lot like the Eye of Horus hieroglyph found in the. It looks just like it almost. It looks pretty identical, which is
it's something that, like, the Egyptians identified 360 separate senses, not just 5 senses.
Yeah, really.
There was a lot more nuanced, and I wonder how much of that has to do with pineal awareness.
That's almost as many genders as there are. That's crazy.
Yeah, it's getting to be that way. I mean, that's another, you know, that's another thing. Like the Macy conferences, you'll find that one of the primary goals of the Macy conferences, and this is admitted by David Rockefeller, who funded and ran them. Hey, you know what? We need to make the boys like girls.
Mm-hmm.
For whatever reason, they see that as part of their ideology.
Yeah.
You know, the first 4 Macy conferences to this day have not been released, but the other ones have, and they're bad enough. But you know, these are documents that, you know, quote unquote, the New World Order, or what I would say, the modern Khazars.
Okay.
And the reason I call them the modern Khazars, they're still following the same ideology. They still follow the same rituals. They still sacrifice children. You remember the Arch of Moloch got destroyed by ISIS in Syria, right? Moloch was the deity to whom you sacrificed children in ancient times. Once the Arch of Moloch, once it was destroyed, guess what? A whole bunch of socialists and Satanists in America recreated the Arch of Moloch in New York City and took it on a world tour.
Oh my gosh, I didn't even see that.
Yeah.
I see a lot of the Satanist stuff at these city town halls now. Like in Ohio, they set up that one and had the Satanists there.
Yeah,
that's kind of odd. I don't know if they're really Satanists though. They say Lucifer is like he's the real good guy. That it's all backwards.
Yeah, and if you're a really horrible bastard, I'm gonna guess that, like, say Adolf Hitler came into power in Germany, I doubt that he told everyone at the start that he was going to screw up their lives. I think he said, this is wonderful. Yeah. I'm the new guy who's going to take care of you. I'm daddy. Let's get this all taken care of. You know, nobody goes into the Satanists aren't going to say, hey, by the way, we like child sacrifice, moral relativism, social Darwinism, narcissism,
and that's the thing
and eugenics.
And that's the different thing with Trump is that some of the stuff he said was pretty rough. I mean, you got to admit, when he was running, it was like, dang, man, take it easy. We want you to, wow. I mean, he would just come out.
Here's the thing I like about Trump. I mean,
like with John McCain, man. I mean, holy cow. He's like, I like people who don't get caught. It's like, that's rough, man.
Not to speak ill of the dead, but John McCain is let's just say, John McCain, he was rated the most popular Republican senator by Democrats. John McCain is the one who took out the Tea Party. He sticked Lois Lerner on the Tea Party to have him audited out of existence.
Yeah. Yeah, we found that.
John McCain's a bad actor. He always has been.
Yeah.
And, they're going to lionize him for a few days and everything like that. And they're going to name a building after him.
Well, it's just
That's
funny.
Great, go for it.
They've gone after Trump for it, like, hey, what's your deal, I think he had there's a law or a bill he was enacting, and it was named after John McCain. He didn't even say John McCain's name. This is before he died. And then when he did die, he, they just been coming after him because they know that he doesn't like him, But that's the funny thing is how you say, well, they're not going to come out and say, oh, this is all the good things or the bad things that are going to happen to you, and then the people go along with it. Whereas Trump, he would say a lot of things that were definitely not political. Like a politician in the past, that would hurt him. Trump, it doesn't hurt him. It's like, that's why they call him Teflon Don, but it's more than that. I think a lot of people see that he's just trying to be a regular person. He's not like some scripted actor like a lot of these guys are, where you watch Obama, his teleprompter goes out and he can't even freaking talk.
Yeah, well, you look at Trump. He goes 3 hours no teleprompter and just shoots from the hip.
Yeah. Well,
I mean, obviously what he's saying, you can't lie for that long without screwing something up. I mean, he is strictly saying what he is thinking. I honestly think that that's where the man's coming from.
Yeah, well. Yeah, it's definitely interesting, and the other thing, too, I've heard is, well, he's a billionaire, man. Billionaires aren't your friends. And I say, well, I don't know.
How do I know? Just because I'm not going to hold it against someone because they made $1 billion.
Well, he's a billionaire, and he's an asshole. And I think about it, I'm like, do you honestly think that Renaissance Ted, could go out there and save us from these people? Or anybody that you know?
Absolutely not.
Do you think it would take a billionaire asshole to get it done, right?
Exactly. One of my friends said, he's a narcissistic, self-centered asshole. I'm like, exactly. That's what we need.
Well, he said,
and he has to be a billionaire. If he's not a billionaire, they're going to eat him alive.
Maybe he's just that way towards these people because you don't know who these people are, right? Like,
no, I think he'd be fine with me.
Yeah, well, definitely. But like the way he acts towards John McCain, or the way he acts towards, Wolf Blitzer on TV and this other guy.
I would act the same way as he would act towards John McCain or Wolf Blitzer, quite frankly.
Blitzer. My ratings would be even lower than yours are. It's like,
it just so happens that. Yeah, it just so happens that Trump's opinion of who the bad actors are matches very closely with my own.
And that goes right into the question I got to ask you. What do you think of QAnon?
QAnon, I haven't been a massive follower. I've touched in and touched out here and there.
Yeah, that's like me too. Yeah.
And the things I heard here and I followed them for a week or two here or there. Hey, intriguing, interesting stuff. Sometimes it came out, sometimes not.
Yeah.
Hey, any little bit helps. If QAnon is able to get 1 million people researching deeply into this stuff, which is what they're doing, at some point in time, QAnon himself or herself, whoever that is, becomes absolutely superfluous to the fact of the matter that he got everybody looking.
Right.
And hey, if he gives us more information, that's great. That's outstanding.
Yeah. Well, some of these things happen, like the plane in Seattle with the Q on it that was flying around doing loops, and the guy's Richard B. Simmons, who's the name of a submarine that's over there, and their, motto's this or whatever, and Q claims it, and, it's all so, there's definitely a lot of people that are like, this is bullshit, this is a cult, but the biggest thing I think that's weird is that Trump hasn't mentioned it at all. He hasn't come out and said anything about it. You'd think if it was bullshit that he would have to know about it, right? His followers are all wearing Q stuff at the rallies. It's news. Somebody's got to tell him, hey, Mr. President, this is going on. There's a giant following. If his followers are being led down this path, he would have to say it. He'd have to say, hey, this Q guy's not, he's not with me.
I think Trump, by not saying anything about Q, is telling us something.
I think so, too.
Trump says something about everything, especially with something the size of the Q movement. I guess I don't have a quantifiable idea of how many people are involved in that. But just the fact that it's there and what it's doing, and Trump has not weighed in on it, means that there's something going on there, and Trump is probably in approval of it.
Well, the weird thing, too, is they're starting to say that John F. Kennedy's, was his son? Who was the guy that got killed in the airplane crash? The guy that was running against Hillary.
John Kennedy Jr.
Yeah, right. Yeah, they're saying he's still alive. That was his plane crash was him doing that to get out of it. to make them think he was dead because they were coming after him.
Right.
Oh, hello. I lost you there for a second, Richard.
You
there?
Oh, I'm here. Hello?
Yep.
1 second here. All right.
Can you hear me?
Yep, I just heard that.
Yeah, I got some weird feedback here. They're messing with us. Oh, man. Yeah, I don't know.
Well, we'll go ahead and wrap this up.
You probably got to get going. We've been talking for quite a while.
Yeah, they're probably going to wonder where I went to, but this has been a blast. It's the first time I've ever gotten to talk as a podcast guy.
Man, thank you so much for coming on.
You're definitely well versed in all these subjects, and that's perfect for
the kind of people that are coming over from Godlike Productions and everybody that might be able to listen to this and look for the truth. But thank you for bringing this Malaysia Airlines thing to my attention. That's something I did miss, and probably on purpose. From them,
I just have to say a couple of those things here and there, but I would one thing I would like to leave everybody with is check out the works of A.T. Flamenco. The man's been working on rewriting our history for 50 years now.
Okay.
And he has 130 books out, but at least get A.T. Flamenco's first numbered book, Chronology, Science or Fiction. And that'll begin
Chronology is science fiction?
Chronology, Science or Fiction.
Chronology, Science or Fiction. Okay.
Key by the author, Flamenco. That is one of the biggest brain benders I've encountered this year, and it is still bending my mind. I've read the first 2.5 books, and I'm going to have to go back and read them again.
Wow.
But it's compelling stuff.
Yeah, definitely. Well, did you want to leave any information if anyone wants to contact you, social media, or you pretty much a ghost out there like most of us?
A bit of a ghost. I have no social media presence whatsoever. Very little presence in society, but I kind of like it that way. Being a nighttime truck driver, obviously not necessarily the most sociable occupation.
Definitely. Well, it gives you lots of time to think, lots of time to listen.
Exactly. And if anyone would like to send a message, just tell them to send it to you there, Resonance Rich.
Resonance Rich. All right, man. Well, hey, thanks a lot for coming on. We'll have to do this again. And really appreciate giving the time.
Yeah, absolutely, Rich. It's been a pleasure. I really appreciate it. It's been a lot of fun.
Awesome, man. All right. Take care, Ted. Talk to you later.
You too. Bye.
Well, thanks, everyone, for joining us. Hope you had a good time. Hope you learned some things. I learned some things. Man, Ted, he knows his stuff, right? Thank you for tuning in and listening to the Hidden Path Podcast. Check out our next episode and keep in touch. And also, we offer you to go check out godlikeproductions.com to stay up to date on the latest. Have a good weekend.